Good morning. Hi. Sorry I'm late. Hi. Sorry. Hello. I'm up. Sorry about that. Good morning, everybody. Ooh. Only have 2 left of this one? Is that true? Ruh-roh. That's not good. Hold on just a freaking minute. Uh-oh. I gotta order more coffee pods. I only have 1 more box of this left. What the heck? How is this possible? I go through so much coffee, y'all. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Favorite Nespresso pod. Right now, I'm really into the Malesio Boost. What's your favorite? I'm open to suggestions. I don't super love flavored ones. I've tried some of the flavored ones before, and they're definitely not my jam. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Haley. Hi, Becca. Hi, Addie. Yeah, Malesio Boost is one of my favorites. And then I also really love the Bianco Doppio. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. I really needed that to wake up this morning. Oh, I've never heard of the Boost. I love Malesio. Yeah, I think it's new because when I first had Malesio last year, they didn't have the Boost. But when I went on the website like a month ago to reorder stuff, they had one called Boost. I think it has more caffeine in it. And if you know, you know. You know what I mean? I'm just not a morning person. Good morning. Having a friend over. I'll check in later. Have a great day. Bye, Michelle. See you later. Have a great day. Oh, it's your day off? That's very exciting. We do need that sometimes. Like right now, I need that. I need the caffeine right now. I'm worried that I'm not going to get a good pour. She has spring break. Oh, it's spring break already? God, that feels so soon. Okay, I don't know if this is gonna work today because you woke up sick. I'm so sorry, Victoria. I'm sleepier than I usually am, so I don't know if this pour is gonna go as seamlessly as it usually does, but we're gonna see if your girl can get day 5 in a row of a perfect pour. The milk is still frothing. Give me a second. My kids are out today because of snow. I remember that from last night, but just 1 second. The milk is still frothing. How many people are sick? My gosh, I'm so sorry to hear it. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Come on. That's what's up. That is what is up. Come on. He's making latkes again. That's what set his hand on fire. Oh my gosh. He needs to be careful. A boy needs to be careful. 5 days in a row of perfect coffee pours. Chef's kiss, man. That was good. It's the new bones day. If it's a no bones day, you can stay in bed. Noodle says it's fine. I started a grease fire at work once again. That is staying home. So many of you are homesick from school and work today. My gosh. What's going on? What's going around? Y'all okay? Are y'all okay? You be alright? Let's read a book. Let's read about it. A stomach bug. Got colds, we got stomach bugs, all the germs. Okay. Yeah, seriously, Addie, tell me about it. Because of snow. Yeah, snow is a much better reason to be home than a cold, I think. I'm sick right now. I have a cold. All of you are sick. My gosh. What is happening? Come on, friends. No more sick. No more sick. Don't do it. Well, who's new here because they're sick? Are you all here just because you're sick and you didn't have anything to do? We do this every morning, but we're late today, which is my fault. Quickly brought the pan outside. Morning, Bee. Bye. Morning. Well, welcome to anyone who's new. This is our book club in the morning. We're reading The Circus Train right now. I'm taking a major late day. I'm home with a migraine. Disney is instead of 8, I'll go at 2. Oh, wow. I hope you're okay. Do you take something for that, or are you just resting? All right. So we're going to read The Circus Train. And for anyone who is brand new, there are some of our, so we do, I've never had a migraine, but I really don't want to experience it. So we do book club lives pretty much every morning, and we read. And because people were unable to make every single one, but still wanted to participate, we started uploading the lives after they process. Exactly. Yeah. On just what Becca said. Becca said she caught up on YouTube this morning. Cause like, for example, Becca had to go to an appointment halfway through yesterday. So she watched the rest of yesterday's on YouTube. It's not a super popular thing, but it is fun. And if you love books, it's a fun thing to participate in. It's a quiet, peaceful morning way to start our day. And, sorry, the video platform, on the video platform, my bad. It is up on the video platform, and now I will read this one here on the clock app. Anyway, so we are on chapter 15 of The Circus Train, and that's it. We're on chapter 15. We're doing great. We're almost halfway through this book. It's been a great book so far. I'm very, very excited about this book. And then we're going to read John's book next. All right, here we go. Following a successful early January run in Eastern Europe, the circus moved north, plunging towards Scandinavia. As the line of carriages edged closer to Norway, Lena and Alexander enjoyed a game of pinochle on a lazy Monday evening. 2 seats over, Lena could hear her father singing with Necka and Anna Maria as they drank from a bottle of Retsina. Sorry, I don't know what that is. It's linked in my bio. Anyone else a bit nervous about the influx of people in our book club for John's book? A little bit, but they'll leave when it's over probably, right? You know what I mean? Outside, delicate flakes of snow swirled around and shards of ice clung to the window panes, enveloping the carriage in a white cocoon. Your turn, Lena said, yawning. She still felt the effects of her early therapy session with Dr. Wilson. Still, after her initial fears had worn off, Lena had attacked the challenge with a renewed focus, forcing herself to work through the struggle of being on her feet. The feeling that she had took her first tentative steps, her father, Alexander, and Dr. Wilson cheering her on had made her so proud. But the act of standing was strange. Her hips, stomach, and back ached at the end of each day. Though her progress was steady, it was tiring, and she would often flop back into her wheelchair when the session ended. This evening, she kept her braces on, but had undone the claps and allowed her legs some room to breathe. Ace of spades, Alexander smiled triumphantly and held his hand out to take Lena's cards. That's 2 for me and none for you. It only occurred to me when he posted about it on his page. Yeah, I didn't know he was going to post it on his page either. I thought it was just going to go to our people, but he did post it on his page. You got this, Lena. Lena.
I'll beat you yet, she said, giggling, and suddenly the train lurched forward. Oof, Lena muttered. Frowning at the cards that had fallen all over the carpet, she craned her neck and saw her father and Necca trying to mop up the Retsina that had survived the jolt. Papa, why are we stopping? Before Theo could answer, Chadwick appeared at the entrance of the carriage, a pinched look on his face. The SS want to carry out a thorough inspection of the train. If we pass, we move on to Oslo. Everyone's going to gather in the dining car in exactly 30 minutes. They've never done an in-depth inspection, Anna Maria said, frowning. Why now? I don't make the rules, Chadwick replied haughtily before marching away to alert the rest of the performers. As Lena secured her braces, she scanned the carriage, noting the worried faces of the other performers. Alexander, who'd been basking in his victory just a moment ago, looked as white as a sheet. She glanced up at her father. Is it bad? I'm sure it's nothing. Come on, let's get cleaned up. Anna Maria is the acrobatic water ballerina from Italy. Yeah, how is your wrist? We haven't talked about your wrist in a while. Are you healing up well? Good morning, Jody. How are you? Jody probably woke up this morning wondering why the heck she had 755 messages on Instagram. Is that what you wondered this morning? Shelly, did you also wake up to 755 messages on, not on the picture app? Did you all wake up to 755 messages on the picture app? I think you did. Doesn't give you the message count. It's still funny. I absolutely did, and you read every single one of them? You had 800? I would never be able to catch up. If I hadn't have been part of the conversation, I wouldn't have caught up. I would have just let it go. I'm sorry. I it's not that I don't love everyone. I just don't have the mental capacity to go back like that. I despise grocery shopping. Yeah, it's not my favorite. Not my favorite. 20 minutes later, Alexander sat on his bed, nervously rubbing his hands together. Though the resemblance to his father was obvious, it had been 2 years since anyone had heard anything about Jacques Robichaud. Surely no one was looking for anyone or anything connected to him now. The damage was done, and Jacques was gone. Jacques? Did I say Jacques? It's Jacques. What the heck? Am I dumb? I've read 1/8 of the messages in that chat. Yeah, probably. He stood up and studied his reflection in the mirror. He'd chosen a pale blue shirt and gray slacks and donned a blazer to look more professional. He glanced at the loose floorboard near the closet, wondering how deep this inspection would be. Surely Horace would have warned them if their rooms were being searched. After all, he wasn't the only one with things to hide, remembering the absinthe and cigarettes that belonged to the other members of the troupe. He closed his eyes, his father's words filling his mind. Cover your tracks, Alexander. They can't find you if you don't leave a trail. He clutched the fake passport that Horace had made for him in one hand and smoothed down the lapels of his blazer with the other. To the outside observer, he looked like an orphan boy, albeit well-dressed, who had joined the circus to make some money. And it was just like his father had said, Alexander reasoned to himself, straightening up. People couldn't see what they weren't looking for. In the dining carriage, the performers lined up. After passing Horace's checks, they waited, some laughing, some chatting, as if they didn't have a care in the world. Alexander stared at them enviously, wondering what it would be like to have nothing to hide. He heard the SS officers before he saw them, the steady click of their heels against the polished wood echoing in the hall. He watched as their head officer made his way down the line, followed by 2 subordinates. Every so often he could hear the head officer speaking in English with a thick German accent. As the officer turned down the row, Alexander recited a silent prayer. Your papers? Suddenly the officer was in front of him, holding out his hand. Alexander placed his passport and contract in his palm and looked straight ahead, his expression unchanging, while the officer flipped through them. Alexander hoped that he couldn't hear his pounding heart. You are from France? Yes, sir. For how long have you worked here? 2 years and 3 months, sir. The officer closed Alexander's passport, tucking the contract in between its pages. He cocked his head. Are you nervous, Alexander? Trembling, Alexander shook his head. No, sir. The officer held his gaze a moment longer before returning his passport and papers and moving down the line. After what felt like hours, Horace announced that everyone was allowed to return to their carriages. Alexander let out a sigh of relief, and he began to follow the other troop members out. "Alexander," he called. The head officer was standing next to him, and Alexander felt his blood run cold. "Yes? You and Theo have been requested to entertain the officers." Alexander screamed inside. The last thing he wanted to do now was perform, but he had no choice. He swallowed, lifted his head, and walked to the head of the table. Throughout the dinner, Alexander concentrated on executing every trick perfectly, performing close-up magic for the 6 Germans seated at the end of the table. Unfortunately, the head officer was one of them. He slurped his wine noisily, pausing every so often to wipe his lips with the back of his sleeve. "You're good at hiding things," he drawled, chewing on a piece of chicken. "It's a skill that most people don't have, especially not at your age." "My father taught me." "Oh? And where's he?" Alexander flushed. "He's dead." The officer picked up a scrap of food that was lodged between his teeth and smeared it on his plate, studying Alexander with renewed interest. "What happened?" "I don't know." Alexander shrugged, his skin beginning to crawl underneath his collar. The officer's eyes never left the young apprentice. His lips curled up as he drained his glass like he was laughing at his own private joke. And then he stood up, clapped his hands twice. "Gentlemen, that will be all." He turned to Alexander as he buttoned his coat. "Until we meet again, Mr. Robichaud." Mario had come out to clear the plates, and Alexander knew that the courteous thing would be to help him, but he couldn't move. "Join me?" Theo approached him with a plate full of leftovers. Alexander jumped like a startled animal. "I'm not feeling well," he said, and rushed out of the dining hall. Later that evening, Lena, who was back in her wheelchair, barged into Alexander's room, but stopped abruptly. He was sitting hunched over on the floor, his head in his arms, crying softly. Embarrassed at seeing him in such a vulnerable state, she stared, frozen. She'd never seen a boy cry. "Are you all right?" she asked, feeling stupid the minute the words came out of her mouth. Alexander wiped at his eyes. He wanted to say everything was fine, but the events of the evening had drained him, and he couldn't muster up the strength to put on a show any longer. At first, Lena hovered in the door frame, but then rolled herself closer to him, remaining quiet. "What's in 2 days, Becca? Did I miss something?" After a few minutes, Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out the golden star necklace, turning it over in his palm. He closed his eyes and pictured his mother's smiling face. He could smell the scent she carried with her everywhere of lemons and clean laundry soap. What he would give to have her here right now. What he would give to be able to bury his face in the thick folds of her brunette hair, always wavy from the salty Marseille air. He hiccuped, fresh tears falling from his eyes. There were some things that only a mother could fix. "They've gone. Papa saw them off," Lena said kindly. Alexander put his head in his hands, and for a second, they might have come through, but I'm not sure that I saw them because there was like an influx of people going in and out of the room, and so it was just like pushing things really fast. It was like, so it like had like 50 people joined, and then, you know what I mean? So it just like, it was crazy. So I might have missed something. Is there going to be a slime live today? Not today, but tomorrow we're doing slime and crime. Tomorrow is slime and crime. For a second, he thought about telling Lena everything, how good it would feel for someone to finally know who he was. But then he looked at her out of the corner of his eye, her innocent face stricken with concern, and he felt himself harden. His father was right. Couldn't let his guard down, lest the web of lies that he had concocted come back to haunt him. I made a special appointment with Oh, that's weird. I'm late and I have to leave early for a meeting, so I'll have to catch up on the video app. All right, Tiffany, well, we're happy to have you regardless for any time you have. I'm scared too, Lena continued. But you're scared? What do you have to be scared about? Alexander snapped. Lena flinched. Alexander had never spoken to her like that. The guards, they're scary. You have nothing to be afraid of, Alexander rasped. Anger seethed through him as he realized how close he'd come to revealing his past. He clenched his hands shut, covering the necklace. Lena stared at him. I didn't mean... Do you know how lucky you are? You are protected from everything. The worst that'll happen to you is you'll get in a bit of trouble, but your father would save you like he always does. His words, normally so encouraging, cut her like a knife. My father's not perfect, Lena retorted. He barely lets me do anything. At least he loves you. Well, I grew up without a mother to love me, so I guess we're even then. The words slipped out before she could stop herself. I think you should go, Alexander said gruffly, turning away. Gladly, Lena yelled, pushing herself towards the hallway. She didn't even bother closing the door. Unnerved by her conversation with Alexander, Lena spent the next few nights tossing and turning. What he'd said was true. She didn't know what it was like to be truly afraid. The war was in full force, yet Lena still felt protected from the real horrors. It was as though she existed in another dimension. She had no idea what it felt like to struggle for food or what it would mean to adopt an entirely new identity for fear of being found out. Even though she'd grown up without a mother, she'd always had her father who loved her unconditionally. Her privilege made her feel guilty that, coupled with her unease about how Alexander had acted, added to her insomnia. On the fourth night of sleeplessness, she hoisted herself into her chair, taking great care not to wake her father. Once she was safely outside her carriage, she headed for the dining hall where she saw Neka sitting next to a bottle of wine. What are you doing up at this hour? Neka's sultry voice was like molasses. Lena thought she looked as graceful as an exotic bird, with her hair spiraling out in all directions, her deep purple lipstick. Have a seat, she said, getting up to move the chair opposite her out of the way. It's very windy all of a sudden. Lena pulled her wheelchair up to the table. Alexander's mad at me. Neka let out a deep, throaty laugh and twirled the stem of her wineglass between her elegant fingers. I doubt that. You two are like glue. Lena frowned. She didn't like the way adults questioned her opinions. This time, she insisted, is different. She explained what had happened. I know he's afraid, but I don't understand why he would get so mad at me. Neka took a contemplative sip of her wine. Do you know what happened to Alexander's parents? The police killed them. Do you know which police? Lena shook her head. We're quite certain it was the SS, the same people who stopped us last week, Neka explained. Lena shuddered, remembering Alexander's bruises when she first saw him. Do you think he was afraid that they'd come back for him? Neka smiled sympathetically. Not necessarily, but think about how you'd feel if the person who killed your parents showed up on your doorstep. Wouldn't you be afraid? I guess, Lena nodded. But he doesn't have to be afraid. He has us. He may love us and be happy here, but old wounds still linger, and Alexander has nothing. Imagine what it's like to be in his shoes, to be abandoned in the most horrific way possible, and then to have to figure out what to do as a child. Do you think it's easy to get over that? No, Lena admitted. I tried to help him feel better, but he got cross with me. Give him time. Boys don't always like to talk about what they're thinking, you know? She smiled. It makes it hard for us girls, but that's the way it is. Lena nodded, but her stomach was still churning uneasily. What if he never wants to be my friend again? Neka burst into laughter. Don't worry about that. I guarantee you that's never going to happen. She paused. You really like him, don't you? Lena stared at Neka, exasperated. Of course I do. He's my friend. Neka smiled broadly, which only infuriated Lena. What? Nothing, Neka said, pushing her chair back. She placed the empty wine glass on a tray of dirty dishes. Come on, let's get you back to bed. In the rare moments she wasn't tied to her desk or holed up in the library with her books, Lena continued to do her physical therapy and practice walking in her braces as much as she could. After a slow start, she had a miniature breakthrough of sorts in February when she overheard a ballerina complaining about leg pain in the infirmary to Dr. Wilson. "You must strengthen your feet," he'd replied. "That's the foundation we build upon." And he went on to prescribe a treatment of foot exercises for her to do every morning and evening. The ballerina had left, and Lena asked Dr. Wilson if he could show her how to do the same exercises. "I'll try anything if it will help," she said, "and I promise I'll work hard." Dr. Wilson laughed, charmed by her dedication. "I'm not worried about that part," he answered, showing her through the routine. Over the next month, Lena dedicated herself to completing the exercises night and day, carefully going over them in the quiet of her room. The constant act of massaging, pointing, flexing, strengthening her feet had all accelerated her abilities. By the end of March, she was taking 8, 9, and then 10 steps in a row before having to grab the chair. Dr. Wilson kept in front of her. Buoyed by her achievements, Lena visited the doctor at the start of April with a special request. "Do you think I can do it?" she asked after explaining her idea. "You've proven me wrong twice now, so yes, I think it can be done, and I'll help as much as I can," he replied fondly. "Thank you!" Lena threw her arms around him. "But you can't say anything to Papa." "I promise," Dr. Wilson said. By the time Theo's birthday rolled around at the end of the month, Lena was ready. After a dinner consisting of all his favorite foods, Theo blew out the candles on a chocolate fudge cake surrounded by performers and crew in the dining carriage. He had just begun slicing the cake into small squares to share with everyone when Lena announced that she had a present for him and insisted he sit on a chair about 20 feet away from her. "The cake can wait. This is more important," she said. Amused, Theo took a seat, curious about what she had planned. Over the years, he'd gotten a great many gifts from her, mostly homemade. A macaroni necklace, a drawing of him performing, a diorama that she'd made out of an old shoebox. And once she'd insisted on Mario letting her bake her father's cake. As he watched, he was touched that she'd carried out a misshapen pile of cake completed with wonky frosting candles proudly singing happy birthday. But as he looked around today, he couldn't figure it out. "Is it some sort of magic trick?" Theo asked. Lena shook her head while the other performers fell quiet. She glanced at Alexander and Dr. Wilson, who were on either side of her. "Ready?" Dr. Wilson asked. Lena nodded. Taking a deep breath, she pushed herself up, steadied herself on her braces, keeping her focus on her father. She moved 1 foot forward and took a step, and then another, and then another, and another, and another. She paused for a second, stopping to regain her balance. She was staring straight past her father now, intent on remaining focused on the task at hand and not getting distracted by him. Her goal was 30 steps. She'd done it in practice, rehearsed it in her mind, and imagined it when she went to bed every night for the past month. She could do this. Slowly but surely, she started again, placing 1 foot in front of another, never slouching or stumbling, but staying firmly upright, her end goal in mind. 29, 30. Lena let out the last number with a gasp, falling into her father's arms. He squeezed her tightly, overcome with emotion. When she caught her breath, Lena jiggled one of the braces. "Did you see the ribbons? I chose blue and yellow because those are your favorites." It was only after she looked up that she realized her father was crying. "Papa," she said, her voice tender, "don't cry." Theo laughed, dabbing his eyes. When he'd composed himself, he looked down at Lena. "Just thinking your life could be a little bit easier for your sake." He turned to Dr. Wilson and shook his hand earnestly. "James, I don't even know how to begin to thank you." "Don't thank me." He planted the seed. Dr. Wilson replied, gesturing to Alexander. "And Lena," he continued, "she's been the one doing the work. I'm merely an overseer." Theo squeezed Lena's hand affectionately and then turned to his apprentice. Unaccustomed to praise, Alexander shoved his hands into his pockets and looked at the floor, but Theo reached out and gently raised his chin. Then he grasped his shoulders and pulled him into a hug. Thank you, Alexander. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And then Theo stepped back and waved his arms, addressing the crowd. Who's hungry for cake? Aw, so sweet. All right. Unfortunately, because it's 8 o'clock, let's see how long this chapter 16 is. Maybe we have time to get through. Chapter 16 isn't long, so I can get through one more, but we're not going to be able to do 3 today because I obviously got up late. Thank you for all the likes, Victoria. That's very sweet. Thank you. So I'm going to read through chapter 16 and then get to work because Catherine's coming soon so we can go to Costco. Because I'm freaking out of everything. Chapter 16. That summer, the World of Wonder stretched out its tour over the bullet-ridden France, but the crowds were beginning to thin as fast as the hair on Horace's head. To her credit, Lena had remained focused, studied incredibly hard, and wrote what she thought was an excellent mock exam. The results, Clara had told her, would take a few weeks to arrive, so Lena busied herself reading novels, watching Alexander rehearse, and even beginning to walk outside of the circus hallways, traipsing slowly and methodically through the Mirage maze. She'd worked her way up to 200 steps before having to take a break. Her back no longer twinged with pain, and she felt a flutter of delight each time she was able to walk a bit further, her legs and confidence growing stronger. During the final days of that season's tour, Lena sat in the library, making a list of all the things she wanted to do with Alexander in Thessaloniki when Clara burst through the doors. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Is your father here?" When Lena shook her head, Clara locked the door, hurried to take a seat opposite her, her brown eyes shining. "The mock results are in." Lena's eyes widened. "And?" She grinned. "You scored very well." She handed her the envelope, and Lena began to scour the pages within. "So well," Clara continued, "that they've agreed to let you sit the full examination in February." "Really?" Lena squealed, joy bolting through her. It was the one thing to have your teacher and your father say you were talented. It was entirely different to have an impartial third party recognize your achievements. "Really?" Clara held up a thick manila envelope. "I've managed to gather a series of past exams. 6 months is plenty of time to prepare." Clara took a deep breath. "Now you don't have to write it if..." "Lena?" Clara asked, noticing the dip in her mood. "Are you all right?" "I just wish I could tell Papa," Lena replied, shaking her head sadly. Clara softened. "Would you like me to speak with him? Now that we've got proof of your ability, perhaps he'd be more receptive to the idea." Lena sighed. She hated lying to her father, but he was the one person who'd supported and nurtured her through her entire life. But she knew what he was going to say. "No," she replied, "don't tell him." "But can I tell Alexander? He won't say a thing to anyone." Clara eyed Lena skeptically. The two children had grown awfully close, but that didn't mean he could be trusted with a secret this big. But seeing the look on Lena's face, Clara relented. "If you're absolutely sure that he will stay quiet, then yes, you may tell him." Lena's face brightened. "Thanks. I've already made up my mind," she continued, gesturing to the results page. "I want to write it." "Splendid. This is splendid news." She looked lovingly into the young girl's eyes. "I am deeply proud of you, Lena." As the days wore on, Lena waited impatiently for Alexander to finish his meetings. He'd been cooped up all day with the other performers in the dining hall, plans and proposals for the next tour already underway. She busied herself in her room, picking out the clothes she wanted to bring back to Thessaloniki for the holiday break. As soon as she heard a knock on her door, she yanked it open. "Were you standing there waiting for me?" Alexander teased. "I've got news," Lena all but yelled, poking her head into the hall to make sure no one else was around. "Big news." Alexander grinned. "Go on." "Remember how you said I could go to boarding school if I really wanted to, that my brain wasn't the thing that was broken?" She could hardly contain her excitement. "You have to promise not to tell anyone, especially not Papa, but I just spent the last year studying for the mock exams for St. Ives that I wrote in June." "And?" "I've just been told that I did so well that I can write the real exam. It's not until February, and it takes months to prepare for it," she continued, picking up a skirt and folding it. "Can you believe it?" Alexander enveloped Lena in a hug, and Lena felt her stomach flutter strangely. "See," he said, his voice loud in her ear. "You see what you can do when you believe in yourself? Let's celebrate. We both have so much to be happy about." "We?" Lena asked. Alexander nodded, another big grin spreading across his face. "I'm getting my own act on the main stage." "What?" Lena dropped the skirt. "Horace just told me. He said I'd shown exceptional improvement and that it was time for me to go solo." Lena let go of her brace handles and threw her arms around Alexander. "That's wonderful." She felt her face flush as Alexander squeezed her and pulled herself away from him, smoothing out her top. "I'll help. We'll set up rehearsals in the garden. And we can even put on a small show down by Ladalinka." Alexander raised his hand through his hair. "The thing is, I can't come back with you. Horace said I have to stay here and rehearse with the other performers." "That's silly. I'll tell Papa. I'll speak with him. Lena, I want to stay," he said finally, his tone apologetic. "Oh," Lena answered quietly. "Right." She turned away and picked the skirt up off the floor. "Lena, no, you don't have to explain. It's only for 2 months. It's fine. Have fun." Lena shot him a brief smile and looked away as he slumped out of the room. But as soon as she heard the door close, she fell on her bed in tears. She took out the list that she spent all morning working on and tore it up into little pieces, letting the bits of paper flutter to the ground. Why was he abandoning her? And why was she so upset? "Stop it. Stop crying," she whispered to herself, brushing away the dampness that clung to her cheeks. "It's just a few weeks." When Lena arrived in Thessaloniki, she was met by a city under occupation, one that was vastly different from the year before. The famine sweeping Greeks had left its mark on the once grand metropolis. Everywhere she went, she saw outstretched palms and heard parched voices pleading for a few drachmas. She tried not to notice the horrifying contrast between the rail-thin arms and distended bellies of the needy. At first, she gave away a few coins that she had jiggling in her pockets, but the constant begging overwhelmed her, and she quickly grew immune to the requests. With no Alexander around, Lena felt adrift, like a rudderless ship. As the break drew out, she wondered what he was doing and who he was doing it with. She wished that she had a photograph to remember him by, and then, confused by her thoughts, she tried to ignore him. Things with her father were strained too. She'd become less and less open around him. She refused to hug him tightly anymore because she was afraid of what her body had become. At night she lay awake wondering if Theo noticed. Surely he had seen the extra curve in her hips, the roundness of her breast, and yet he continued to say nothing. When he asked her why she no longer wanted to accompany him on outings or lie in the sand in her swimsuit the way when they traveled to Halkidiki, she lied and said that she wanted to protect her skin from the sun. One evening, Theo had asked Lena why she didn't want to join him for a night of cards at the neighbor's home. She snapped, "I don't want to spend all my time with old people," she yelled, getting up from the table. Theo winced when he heard Lena's bedroom door slam shut a few seconds later. He noticed her increasing moodiness, but he was too preoccupied with bigger problems to give her the attention he knew she needed. With each passing month, the war grew worse. His beloved Greece was now occupied not just by Germans, but by the Italians and Bulgarians too. After they'd seized power, it hadn't taken long for King George to flee. He was somewhere in Egypt, reports had stated. Although Greece's parliament ruled from Athens, the country was essentially out of their control. In the face of growing hold that the Axis power had on Europe, his main priority was keeping Lena and Alexander safe. Theo buried his head in his hands, his heart laced with conflict. It was not often that he felt alone, but today, more than ever, he wished that Gia had been there to help. Sad. Poor Theo. It's gotta be hard. My gosh. We're almost halfway through the book, y'all. We're almost halfway. Oof, oof, oof. Well, there were only 2 chapters, but they were good chapters. But not Isabella. I just finished... Yes, We will start chapter 17 tomorrow. Yes. Well, she's coming a little bit. I'm going to get some work done before it does keep getting better and better. She's turning into a teenager. It's crazy how fast this book is going. Yeah, it's great. It's a great book. Very exciting. Very exciting. Hey, Kelly, we're just finishing up for the morning, but the recaps will be on the video app, the long form video app for people who need to catch up later. Have a great day, everyone. I will see you all tomorrow morning. I'll be around, obviously, all day on messages and stuff, but there will not be a live tonight because, we start normally at 7 a.m. I was late this morning, Victoria. I'm so sorry about that. But, on Tuesdays, we have bachelor night at Catherine's house, so I won't be on tonight. But tomorrow is Slime and Crime with Ellen. I don't know what case we're doing. Y'all can blow up her comments and ask her what case she's going to do. She hasn't told me yet, but we'll do that tomorrow. And I'll be making another custom order tomorrow because I got another freaking birthday party order. Custom orders are just rolling in this spring. So I'll probably do that on Slime and Crime tomorrow. But yeah, that's what's up. I'll see y'all later.